Hello, in this video I want to talk about grief, why it's so important to grieve, and to understand what the role of cognitive dissonance plays and how it can keep you trapped. Hello and welcome to the Divorce Sanctuary. I'm Elizabeth Goddard, author of Finding Lily and the A to Z of emotional abuse. On this channel I talk about healing from emotional abuse and divorcing from the emotional abuser, both physically and emotionally. If you're new to the channel, please don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you're returning, thank you. And thank you to all my new subscribers recently. I'm so very grateful for your support. So healing the past, present and future. And when you come out of a toxic relationship, there are so many things that are going on in your body and your mind. And just like a drug addict or someone trying to give up an addiction, you have cravings. Only your craving is a person. You're trapped. And you had no idea this abuse was going on. There are so many stages to healing and divorcing emotionally from the abuser. One of those is grieving the past, the person you believed that they were, and the trauma bonds and the cognitive dissonance plays a role in keeping you trapped. Your thoughts play out over and over, remembering how good you were together, all the fun times you had, diluting the reality of what they did, what they said, and how they treated you. I'm going to put a link to a meditation to help you balance your emotions and a workbook that can help you start the discovery process. I'll put that in the description box below. It helps you find a safe space and helps you understand what's going on for you on the inside. You can use the exercises as many times as you need to. And don't be surprised if your emotions change each time. You might experience fear, anger, sadness, frustration. There might be self-worth issues. You might be questioning what you did wrong or where you went wrong. We develop bonds for survival in childhood, usually with our caregiver, who is the foundation of attachment. When our safety is threatened in some way, we turn to them for support and protection. Trauma bonding is one of the reasons it's so hard to heal from toxic and emotionally abusive relationships. The damage caused puts you in a state of confusion, as you had no idea the abuse was taking place. Bonding happens in all relationships, but this type of bonding was one-sided, and this is why it's so easy for them to walk away, as they didn't bond with you. When our safety is threatened in some way, we turn to our tribe for support. And these bonds can be created within hours. Bonding is a very strong connection. It strengthens when we spend time with someone, make love, have children together. Trauma bonding is used by the emotional abuser or the toxic person to enable them to gain power and control over you. So during the idealization stage, they position themselves as the caregiver, showering you with attention, gifts, meals out, days out, manufacturing a love you may never have experienced before. They then started devaluing you with slight put-downs, triangulation or gaslighting. And you may have rationalised their behaviour believing they cared for you, creating even more bonding. And this was the reason that you were so connected to them. And when the relationship ended, you wondered how you would survive. Trauma bonding made it hard to enforce boundaries, which was why it was so painful to stay away from them. So after getting you addicted to oxytocin and dopamine through the love bombing, they started to introduce situations that release stress hormones, the fight, flight, fawn, freeze. This was done with the slight put downs and creating drama, manufacturing these emotions. When the relationship finished, your stress levels were so high you experienced fear and couldn't imagine life without them. They, on the other hand, play the victim. And you very likely believe this is all your fault, and the pain you feel runs deep into your soul. You might have a childhood wound or a few that have allowed this to happen. And much like physical wounds, this emotional wound hurts and causes pain during our lives, it might leave us without the emotional coping mechanisms others may have, and it might be the reason that you've never felt whole. By tracking down the wound and allowing it to heal, you can start to feel whole again and break the cycle. But please remember, if you have been walking around with this wound for decades, it might not happen within hours. You might have learned behaviours to protect yourself from further hurt, so you might need to work on changing your thoughts as well. There is a sacredness in tears. They are not the mark of weakness, but the power. They speak more eloquently than 10,000 tongues. They are the messages of overwhelming grief, of deep contrition, and of unspeakable love. Washington Irving. So why then, after understanding all this, would it be important to grieve when no one has died? The definition of this intense sorrow, especially caused by someone's death. Similar words are sorrow, misery, sadness, anguish, pain, distress, agony, torment, affliction, suffering, heartache, heartbreak, brokenheartedness, heaviness of heart, woe, desolation, despondency, dejection, despair, angst, mortification, mourning, mournfulness, bereavement. From the definition of grief, how many of the emotions could you circle that you've experienced at the end of the relationship? A couple, maybe a handful, or possibly you've experienced every single one of them. At the end of an emotionally abusive relationship, you will experience emotions that feel foreign to you. You might hear sounds coming out of you that you would only believe an animal could make. You might experience mood swings. You might have more questions than answers, and this is all normal. But I want to point out at this point, this should not be normal. You should not be experiencing this. You do not deserve this. However, after what you have been through, it is normal to go up and down with your emotions and to have your thoughts hijacked as well. Every single layer of you has been infiltrated and you might feel under attack. Normal people do not treat each other this way. And the other puzzle piece that I want to make you aware of is cognitive dissonance. This is the perception of contradictory information. Relevant items of information include a person's actions, feelings, ideas, beliefs and values, and things in the environment. Cognitive dissonance is typically experienced as a psychological stress when you participate in an action that goes against one or more of them. According to this theory, when two actions or ideas are not psychologically consistent with each other, people do all they can in their power to change them until they do become consistent. The discomfort is triggered by a person's belief clashing with new information perceived, wherein they try to find a way to resolve that contradiction to reduce their discomfort. In his theory of cognitive dissonance in 1957, Leon Festinger proposed that human beings strive for internal psychological consistency to function mentally in the real world. A person who experiences internal inconsistency tends to become psychologically uncomfortable and is motivated to reduce the cognitive dissonance. And you might be experiencing this faced with new facts and information. You may remember the person who wore the mask, the person they were during the idealization stage, when they promised you everything and they played the role of soulmate. But the reality of who they really are is confusing. You might be triggered by emotions that are so unfamiliar to you, swinging like a pendulum backwards and forth. Grieving is so important for your healing. No one died physically, but in a way you are grieving the person you thought they were. You were grieving the life you thought you were living, and you were grieving the future that they had promised you. You gave up so much and you waited patiently for the payout. And just like someone waiting at a slot machine, investing their time and money, you did the same with the relationship. Each time something went wrong, you wondered what was happening. Each time they took you round a circle of abuse, you reached the idealization stage again, and you were reminded of the future you had together. You were told how good you were together, or that you were soulmates. You were meant to be together. And you took your place back on the pedestal and waited for the big win, for that big payout. You might be remembering all the good times you had together, but the confusion is between the person you thought they were to the person they revealed themselves to be. This is the cognitive dissonance. You hold two conflicting thought patterns. Have you ever known a person who's died and instantly became a saint? Whilst living, this person might have been nasty, hypocritical, vile to everybody around them. But for some reason after their death, people scratch around looking for something nice to say. And they gloss over or conveniently never mention the abuse or their vile temper, because you should never speak ill of the dead. Your mind might be clouding over the abuse and presenting the good things that you had together. You might be grieving everything you created or that you did for them for a promise, and you're left with nothing. You might have put off going to university, or you might have had plans to travel, or you might have moved away from family and friends to be with them. They sprinkled just enough of your dreams to make you feel this is what you wanted. Grief is unique to each of us and to each situation. You have lost everything. You need to take time to grieve. You're grieving the relationship, the fake future, the soulmate that they convinced you they were. You might still be looking back and believing that if you had behaved in a different way or said something differently, you would still be together. You need to process what happened and what you were promised. You need to balance the thoughts that are keeping you trapped. There will be days where your grief takes over, or out of nowhere, tears just roll down your face. I'll put the link to the meditation that will help you balance your emotions. And there's a workbook that will help you start this discovery process. It's giving you a safe space to sit and understand what's actually going on inside you. We're all a bunch of chemicals that are held together in our skin. And if you think back to your days at school and your science lessons, when the chemicals were mixed together, there was a reaction. And we're the same. You may have experienced this when you met the person for the first time, and it caused a reaction within you. There may have been an instant attraction or an instant dislike. These are chemical reactions within your body. When you're in or recovering from emotionally abusive or toxic relationship, the way you're feeling could be due to the chemicals that are raging around your body. Think of a teenager who can't communicate, and their emotions are everywhere. You're not quite sure when they open their mouths who you're going to get. Does that sound familiar? By changing the chemicals in your body, you can change the way that you feel about situations and how you approach them. These emotions may appear following or alongside emotional flashbacks, which can be sudden and overwhelming, triggering your survival instincts. These emotions can include fear, shame, alienation, rage, grief, and depression. Emotional flashbacks can range from subtle to horrific, and they may vary in duration from moments to weeks. And this is one of the reasons it's so important to go no contact or grey rock. By being in contact with the abuse, you're still on alert. Your body needs time to detach from them. Rumi said, grief can be the garden of compassion if you keep your heart open through everything. Your pain can become your greatest ally in your life's search for love and wisdom. Fear is a feeling induced by perceived danger or threat, and fear in these relationships is the feeling of loss or a great emptiness. Your brain isn't working, you can't compute anything. You were programmed over months and years to believe you needed the abuser to be able to survive, and that anyone else was a threat to you and to your safety. And then one day they walked away. You have no idea how you're going to survive without them. You might even realise that you had a life without them before you met, and wonder why you're experiencing so much fear and not know how to live. These stress hormones are raging around your body, and to protect itself from the trauma, your brain goes into hibernation. The abuser's insecurities and their fears were projected onto you. There was a type of bartering that went on which you were unaware of. So instead of being an even swap where you both benefited, you had something they wanted and they took it. And they had an insecurity or something they don't like about themselves, so they gave it to you. Their biggest fear was abandonment, and they did everything to strip you of your self-esteem and make you fearful of them abandoning you. This emotion is indescribable, but it's due to the gaslighting and the cognitive dissonance that transpires in fear. Or you may feel lonely and in pain as you watch a replacement step into your fake future. This feeling could be due to the trauma bonding that took place and the fear of not knowing how to function without them. They manoeuvred themselves into your life, putting themselves into that place of power, and then they took control of you. They were so insecure they actually feared that you would leave them. So they made you believe that you couldn't function without them. And they kept reminding you how lucky you were to have them. And when you're no longer of use, they left without a backward glance. And you're left with these emotions that are completely unfamiliar to you and living in fear. You've lost everything. You need time to grieve. You are grieving the relationship. You're grieving the fake future, and you're grieving the soulmate they proclaim to be. This loneliness may bring up feelings of being unworthy. They moved on, and during the devaluation stage, they told you time and time again what was wrong with you. You may have found out not only have you lost yourself emotionally, mentally, physically and spiritually in the relationship, but you also lost all your finances. This loneliness is a pain that emanates deep within you from your soul. You can barely function and you don't understand who you have become. And if the real you is still in there, the pain you're experiencing are old wounds, and I hope one day you'll realise the gift that they have given you. This is a real chance to heal. Perhaps it isn't what you're feeling at the moment, and you're desperately holding yourself back from trying to re-engage with them. The pain of being out of this relationship may feel worse than the pain of being in it. On average, people go back 7 to 8 times. I believe fear is one of those reasons. These emotions creep up on you and they take over, releasing stress hormones. I remember that loneliness was something I experienced, and it seemed to be something other people experience as well. Coming out of these relationships, you look around and you realise the people who were around you have all disappeared, and then you're overtaken by grief. There could be moments where you slip back, remembering who you thought they were, not who they really are. Perhaps you don't know or fully understand who they are. You might have so many questions. And part of breaking the bond is divorcing emotionally. And one quick way to snap out that process is to ground really quickly before you get trapped in an emotional spiral and get sucked into a vortex of grief and emotion. Now, please don't get me wrong. You do need to grieve, and you need to grieve who you believe they were, grieve the relationship, grieve the death of part of you and your fake future, which you might still be trapped in. You need to heal the wounds. It's really important. And this will help you divorce them emotionally so that you can feel nothing towards them. And when they do play their silly games, it does nothing. You are not triggered in any way. I recorded a meditation to help you balance your emotions, and along with it is a workbook that will help you with the discovery process. It gives you or helps you create a safe space to understand what's really going on for you inside of you. You can use the exercises as many times as you need to, and you don't be surprised if you do this and your emotions change each time. You might experience fear and anger, sadness, frustration, self-worth issues, questioning what you did wrong and where you went wrong. You can use it at any time. Just allow a little bit of time in between to integrate back the missing parts. And you can also break the exercises down individually. As I said at the beginning, you might have been walking around with these wounds for years, and you might have adjusted your behaviour because of them. For some people, they notice a change straight away, and others it can take a little longer. It's so important to grieve at the end of the emotionally abusive relationship, and by calming down your stress hormones, acknowledging your triggers and nurturing yourself, you can help balance who you thought they were, and the cognitive dissonance melts away. If you'd like to find out more information on how to work with me, I'll put the links below, along with the links to both my books, Finding Lily and The A to Z of Emotional Abuse. I also have 2 free workbooks, Turn Broken into Your Superpower and Self-Care is Vital. And I'll also put the link to the meditation and workbook, Grieving the Past, Present and Future, all in the description box below. You can join me on Facebook in the Divorce Sanctuary, where we talk about healing from emotional abuse and support people going through the physical divorce process as well. Please don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel, and I'm sending you loads and loads and loads of love.